First of all, hello to everyone in this idea. It's a very atypical context, but the important thing is that we are here to talk and think together. I made this video following the guidelines given to us, so I'm not going to make my presentation about myself, and I add in this video some links as they appear on the screen, and there's some extra information that can be assessed later. So I would like to thank all involved in this edition, and thanks for the participating in this meeting about archives. It's an honor for me to collaborate with what we have done here in Brazil and in mailing, because I understand that we are not alone in this mission. The mission of the task force, it's always present in understand the power of these archives. However, back to the paper, we was drafted from the perspective of the three axes. What are the case studies in infrastructures, technology, and international collaboration? Regarding the case study, what I came to bring, the FAD has a database with a great power to become an archive and collection. Today, we have more than 2,000 entries between Brazilian and international artists, which very detailed information layers composed of all kinds of data, such as images, manuals, videos, technical descriptions of the works, and other many types of the documents and text. And about the proposal, the artists freely write about their proposals in these documents, but information about your intentionality in your works. It's a very concrete and present way to a good quality information for archives, I think. In conversion with Paula, there is not directed and creative of the files on Paulo. They also have a database that seems to be structured, and in her words, she's intent to put this database in evidence with the possibility to transform in archives, like a FAD. I have been working with the FAD records and database for over 7 years, and I have been part of my academic and empirical research. The first question was how festivals like ours are based on reliable databases with a great power to be quality collections. This places responsibility not only of the festivals, but also on artists and the other institutions. I discuss this clearly in my master dissertation, in which he correlated artistic practices and technological art with the responsibility of helping to build these archives. That's it, a kind of cooperative shared responsibility, a technical concern with information and information process. So on the second question, important that it's infrastructures. It's I took for my doctoral research, which refers to informational studies from the production of information from the technological arts, placing the immanent production of this type of art as a producer of archives and highly qualified database. There are outside to the they are outside the scope of public and private investments in normative institutions in the sector. Again, the festivals gain a big centrality uh, uh, because this type of the entries and registers in the database, the archives, and the possible collections. With the experiments carried out from the digital art festivals in Brazil, we prepared a small tests on how to work information in a decentralized network of distribution and construction of these archives that could be the characteristics of the peer-to-peer network, and why not with the structuring of reliability of of blockchains. I know that a lot has been discussed about decentralized systems and peer-to-peer and digital native art, are very much concerning about copyright and commercial art. But our approach is toward producing information from qualified data maintained by network of interest in this field at a much lower cost. And in the case of the machine learning and blockchain process, they have a high capacity of they maintain themselves successful in the coming years. I want to remember that we came out of several theoretical studies and went through the analysis of important institutions like DKM, Ars Electronic, other museums and institutions in Brazil. Just mention an example with a series of the interviews and observations on their practices. But I want to make it clear here that in archaeologist analysis, it's not summarized as much may appear, but it's what's necessary to connect more than one theory in different fields in this proposal of infrastructure for our archives and our database. These studies are not conclusive, but they point our way in the face of the inevitable scarcity of research and the characteristics that separates, for example, the culture of media art in Brazil with the other major centers around the world. No? And I can go into much for the short time, but the idea that I wrote for this meeting of ours is collaborative, tough, and in that sense, we are going toward the third point that deals with the interchange between institutions around the world. Given the South American characteristics of the constitution of festivals and the absence of museums, convocation, and technological art, we understand that it's a laboratory, it's possible with the archives and database of the FAD, Biennial, and FIO, and other South American partners can become an applicable model and sustainable model for the Southern Cone narrative or Southern Cone archives. In other words, we are not talking about something new, which is in the informational interoperability between these actors, but perhaps what's new, and I mean new in quotes, in the form based on the technological structure with a lower computational cost possible, and based on qualified information, it's possible to mitigate the loss of memory in history, and least in the South American context of the technological art. So in conclusion, what I bring to the perception of the the paper in our practices and ongoing researches is that the approach to the field information management and qualification of this information from the database in the records on the main Brazilian actors with possible replication by similarity with our South American neighbors may allow the database to allow the archives to be produced from this centralized network with prospect for both machine learning and security structures such as blockchain. I repeat that intention of this study is not similar to previous studies related to, for example, using blockchain for the discussions about originality of digital native artworks, digital art, born digital art, or for example, monitoring and control of copyrights, or about the monetization of the artists institutions. It's not about this. Out of any implementation on autonomous and semi-autonomous technological and cooperative infrastructure has properties to become even economically sustainable science we can treat from the point government plans or private plans a kind of rewards or revenue share for these decentralized actors in this peer-to-peer network, and of course with the encrypted criteria for a good exchange process of the information. Evidently, what could not in any way prevent access to free information. Finally, I think that our part, what we can do to contribute to a common access with South America in the production of the archives, recognizing that we have investment problems, prejudice for the applications of certain technologies, and discredit in betting on free network. Well, that's it. Sorry, my English is not my native language. And thanks again for everyone to the opportunity of exchange.
Hi, my name is Elisa Arca, and I will present the project that we've been working on in the past year, named ePPA, which stands for Espacio Plataforma de Preservación Audiovisual, or Space Platform for Audiovisual Preservation. ePPA's goal is to create an online platform and a physical space in the Lima Art Museum in Peru, where people will have access to video artworks held by the Lima Art Museum and Alta Tecnología Andina, a long-standing institution that has promoted media arts for the past 25 years in Peru. The goal of the project is to make the information on these works available and public. The video files can be watched on-site at the Lima Art Museum, and in some cases we provide Vimeo or YouTube links when the artists have decided to make their pieces public online. We are aware that our actions need to be accompanied by attention paid to the material objects that carry the artworks, which is why in the process of collecting information about them, we were also attentive to the physical conditions in which they were stored. However, improving these conditions is part of a crucial second phase of the project that we haven't yet initiated. This presentation aims at understanding the challenges of creating a unified platform to tell more than one possible history of video art in Peru. I will first describe the video art collections that ePPA will make available through the platform. In the second part of the presentation, I will reflect on the ways in which the information system that we chose to present these collections, collective access, and the application programming interface, API, on top of it, is helping us telling these possible histories. By doing so, I would like to draw your attention to the specific way in which this arrangement is helping us creating narratives. Alta Tecnología Andina, High Andean Technology, or ATA, was created in 1995 as a non-profit organization that would become the epicenter of multiple cultural events dealing with art, science, and technology. ATA initiated the International Festival of Video and Electronic Art in Peru. Parallel to this showcase of Peruvian art, ATA ran a space dedicated to experimentation with video from 1998 to 2004. It was inspired by spaces like the CICV, International Center for Video Art Creation in France. Artists and people coming from different disciplines with a shared interest in audiovisual creation converged in the headquarters of an advertisement agency, where during the night, the equipment was available for other kinds of more creative uses. It is from this 6-year experience that the ATA collection comes from. The video pieces that transpire the social concerns and aesthetic values of Peru in the early 2000s can be seen as a period of intense creative work in that medium. The Lima Art Museum, on the other hand, holds another crucial set of artworks that help the viewer have a comprehensive idea of the history of video art in Peru. This set of artworks, authored by Peruvian artists that studied and lived or live abroad, and whose pieces circulate in an international market, such as those by Maya Watanabe, Marco Pando, David Singhi, but also Latin American artists like Liliana Porter from Argentina or Francisco Casas from Chile. The museum's collections have a decisively more historical approach, and the place video art has within these collections should be considered in relation to the 18,000 art pieces that the museum holds. Contemporary art in general is, in Malik's collection, integrated within a larger and broader geographical context. How to highlight the specificity of ATA and the museum's collection while simultaneously weaving an intertwined history? How to turn an information system into a virtual exhibition, how to create a space for consultation that would, at the same time, speak to the project of a museum facing important changes, how to remain aligned with archival best practices and at the same time, remain relevant to any visitor of the museum. Those were among the questions we asked ourselves at the beginning of the project. I will now focus on the collective access platform, how we envisioned the project, how it evolved, and what we learned in the process. The project began with us collecting all the information available, digging into the museum and the organization's archives. We dug into the history of each artwork, their numerous iterations, especially in the case of video installations, the historical context in which they arrived to the collection, and the curatorial criteria for the purchase or donation. The attempts to properly organize these diverse and non-homogeneous pieces of information into Excel sheets had the benefit of helping us visualize the overflow of data we didn't really need, and in some cases we were not allowed to share in the case of contracts or internal correspondence. The qualitative information we had was not really aligned with collective access's predetermined fields, even if the election of that system was based on flexibility it would allow us. How to give proper account of these complex sets of data is a challenge intimately related to the affordances of collective access. Creating a template to document the artworks amounted to establish a dialogue between the non-systematized media art collecting practices in Peru with that of world-class institutions and research initiatives that have been working on the field for at least a decade. Also, we attempted to modify a pre-configured standard, Dublin Core, taking into consideration the information that was already available in the museum's collection management system, the museum system or TMS. Also, the process of translation, adaptation, or refutation of several thesauruses and glossaruses made it clear that we weren't simply recataloguing the pieces, but to a certain extent, rewriting a part of video art history in Peru. It was not until a group of professionals in charge of user experience design suggested that we provided some guidance to the visitor of the website that we realized the collective access platform might not be enough to reach our goals. An application programming interface, API, would provide guided access to the collection. It would create a second layer of information that differs from the type of data gathered for documentation purposes. The catalog hosted in collective access would remain underneath the API and data would be pulled from it. Entry points to the collection are, of course, not innocuous. They inevitably shape the user's understanding and even visualization of the history of video art in Peru. They allow us to have some kind of editorial control over the collection. We quickly understood that this entry point structure that we were building would also serve us integrate new ways of narrating this history. Ideally, access to the collections would provide researchers in the field with information needed to write new challenging narratives that we would like to present using the API at some point. We are aware that by creating an access layer through the API, we are making search criteria and its mechanisms less visible. We didn't want to completely erase the catalog, which is why we provided access to it through a link. We want the public to be able to access the descriptors we use for each work. Our voices and criteria are expressed in these descriptions, just as the artists' and the curators' voices. We're also aware that by creating these paths and opening the possibility of creating new ones, we are offering a limited action over the records. The question remains, to which extent do we want records to be modifiable, pointing directly at the openness of the descriptors. I would like to conclude this presentation by pointing out the potential tension between archiving and exhibiting. Our platform aims at presenting artworks to the public all year round, in the hope it will compensate for the lack of access to audiovisual works in Peru. On the other hand, the project also aimed at recataloguing more exhaustively the video artworks that enter the museum and the organization's collection in a time where there were no predetermined descriptors to give proper account of the works, at least in Peru. I consider that beyond the case study that I presented, we should keep those two interests in mind: the function through which one can access this more exhaustive background information, and the layer that would make quick and accessible navigation possible. In other words, it seems that in the digital age, we always have the opportunity to include other stakeholders' interests by providing new kinds of access. I look forward to discuss this idea further, benefiting from your experience and the thoughts you may have on your own projects. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bertrand Gervais. I'm a professor at l'Université du Québec à Montréal, therefore here in Montreal. I'm a professor at the Literary Studies Department, and I'm the head of the NT2 lab, which curates the exhibition research, which is part of ICA 2020. What I want to do today is come back to the paper that I wrote, entitled Carving Out a Path, Building Research and Knowledge Environments in a Digital Culture. And I want to look at, I don't want to theorize what these environments are, but just want to give you examples of what they are and what we have done with them. Maybe to give you a cue. So for us at the NT2, Research and Knowledge Environment is a complex online resource offering research results and layers of analysis that exploit a theme and animate a research community. It is a dynamic and continuous developing resource and ongoing encyclopedic platform. So it is a hub of research activity, a web-based strategy to structure and publish research, dynamic in its process, which offers a diversity of documents and information. So what I want to show now is the major research and knowledge environments that we've built starting from 2004 at the beginning of the lab. So evidently the first research and knowledge environment that we built was the Hypermedia Art and Literature Directory, which is part of the NT2 website. So that directory, which has now 4,037 entries, well, we took 15 years to build. We decided to find all the hypermedia, net art, web art that was produced and try to understand it. And to try to understand that, we needed to identify all the works existing and trying to have like a formal description of what they were. So we ended up building a major directory. For every entry, we have a short description. We have a taxonomy, a few taxonomies which are used. And these taxonomy help us to identify, help us to build a search engine, let's say numérique. You know, so every time you do a search in a search engine, well, you end up finding a lot of results, a lot of, you know, from either from the directory itself, from news, images, and whatever. So we built this directory, and we weren't content with only building that directory. We decided also to add layers of discourse and layers of analysis of the works we decided we identified and put into the directory. So we built the e-journals. We had like short articles called punctuals, des ponctuels, thematic dossiers, working with the directory on, how would you say, on sur des traverses. Also, more open op-ed entries. So we did a lot of, we had our blogs, we had our podcasts, we still have our podcast. The last one is from June 16, 2020. So we did a lot of work trying to structure research around the directory, which was our main resource and our main original resource. So playing with that type of website structure, well, we decided to generalize our research and knowledge environment policy. So we went into two distinct directions. One was to help Figura, which is the research center to which we belong, to help Figura organize its research in terms of a web aspect. And on the second hand, we also tried to better understand and to develop more projects on digital culture, digital art, and literature. So if we look at the first aspect, the more community partnership oriented projects, well, we help out building the major Figura project, which was l'Observatoire de l'Imaginaire Contemporain. And if you look at all the you know, the different categories of entries, you'll see that there's a lot of text, a lot of documents, a lot of interviews and everything. But at the same time, we started to build a complete ecosystem. And you have on the banner on top of the website, well, all the different projects that we've worked on and that we, as a team at the Tadeus, we helped put online, even though we were working with researchers from the Figura Center. So we did l'Observatoire. We also did Pop en Stock, which is a online, really open journal on popular culture, series, television, cinema. So it's a really community-oriented review. We also did a peer review website, which is for la revue Capture, Figure, Théorie et Pratique de l'Imaginaire. And we really worked on the way images were presented in the articles in that review. If you look just at like one, I'll show you at least one article on la cartographie. So you can see that every time we have an image, well, we've really worked hard to have a really high quality of images. So enabling that journal to work on image culture in a more precise way, not just without images, but with images themselves. So we also we did web docs for one of our researchers. We did a directory of audio recordings of Québécois poets. We also did like a small project with Projet F, which is a fiction collective. We did Hochelaga Imaginaire, so a geopoetic stance on the city and on one district, which is Hochelaga, the old name for Montreal. So that's one aspect of the work we've done. That is working with a community, a research community, and trying to help it to put online in a dynamic and a very constructive manner its ongoing research. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, well, we worked a bit more with the Tadeus research team, both the graduate students and a few of the scholars. Well, we've worked on digital culture, digital art, and digital literature. And in building the directory for 15 years, we suddenly had this idea that, for instance, exhaustivity, systematicity, the way databases forces us to force us to be really systematic in our approach, we realized that there was with that aspect like a new form, a new strategy, a new creative strategy. So the Archiver le Présent research and knowledge environment is dedicated to exploit that hypothesis, that a new form of creation, that a new paradigm, that's I think is a better word, new paradigm of the creative process is at work right now, and is giving us new forms of art and literature. So the same way as the directory for the NT2 project, well, we have at Archiver le Présent a collection. So this collection is the center of the core of the project, but all around it you have layers of analysis of discourses. We're trying to both have this hypothesis and trying to prove it by building a collection of works that pertain to that hypothesis, but also with critical discourse. We've also been working on a few exhibitions. That is our way of working in a different manner with all the works we've identified in our directory. So with Uchronia, what if, you have to remember we started that work early 1917, just after Trump's election. So we worked with this dystopian future, with the idea of a Ukraine where suddenly the future itself becomes really a strange place. So we did some curating. We decided to find some works that had to do with either speculative futures, dystopian internet, or also that is only simply playing with time. So for every entry, well, you have a description. You also have you gain access to the work itself. So every time we work with the same type of project. And the last exhibition we've just done, and we've done it for ICA 2020, it's called Research, and it deals with the way the search engines, the Google search engines, and all the other engines, well, construct our reality, construct our way of gaining access both to knowledge and to art and literature. So we emulate some form of search engine, and we say, let's say, monitorer. So for every time you write in a verb that has to do with research, well, you get a few examples of works that have to do with monitorer le présent. For instance, fuyante, well, you have a description of that work, as well as you gain access to the work itself, which plays with addresses and Google Street View. So that's basically what I wanted to show today. That is a series of projects, some of them in research creation, the others doing research either on contemporary imagination or digital imagination and art, and those works that enable us to, in a way, build up an ecosystem dedicated to research on contemporary imagination. So thank you very much for your time and patience.
Thank you very much for our three most recent presenters. There's a lot of work that has been going into all of these different examples, and really fantastic presentations of what they've been working on as well. We have now the chance to be able to be asking questions. If anybody in the audience has questions, then you can please put them into the live discussion on the swap card instance. And I'm going to go ahead and open up with the first question that I'm going to pose to all three of you, which I think has been bubbling up in a couple of different places. And this might be something that we would, in the breakout rooms and in the concluding session at the end, be able to talk to more. Basically, you all three have these fantastic examples of a lot of work that has been going into these three different archives that are in three different languages, in two different continents, and I'm sure that when you were putting together the beginning works and the beginning inspirations, you were as well looking at other examples and talking with colleagues and deciding how you wanted to do things. There are discussions that you have about the creative discussions about what you would like for the archive to be able to accomplish. There are the more technical aspects of what kinds of metadata systems and how the data is going to be controlled. And then there are the research and the academic kind of questions. And so I guess my question, there's somebody that just gave a question, so I'm going to ask my question and then go read the next question, is what kinds of information would you ask of one another to be able to then, or that you would share with other upcoming archives to be able to say, this is how archives need to be able to, across languages and also across borders and across continents, to be able to cooperate with one another, share information and tools?
Who's going to answer first? Well, I can always start answering. In fact, when we started in really rapidly in 2004, building that directory, we were really aware of some of the other groups that were working in that direction. So we did a lot of work with ELO, the Electronic Literature Organization. We did a lot of work with ELSIP. Just before us, that our atelier, there was Scott Redberg from ELSIP. So we worked with ELSIP, we worked with ELO, we worked with We Love ePoetry in Portugal, in Porto. And because rapidly we understood that the directories and the metadata and the ontologies we were using to create our own directory had to be, well, we had to collectively try to establish a common language and a common ontology. So we did a lot of work with other international researchers and research units, and we even built up the Cell project, which is still online, and we wanted to be able to have our databases communicate with other databases, with ELO, with ELSIP, with We Love ePoetry, and we did this Cell project. I'll put the website URL online. So from the beginning, it was clear that we had to put our efforts together, and we had to put our directories together. So we did it at one point, and now it still is evolving.
I wish I could say the same about our project. It's true that media preservation in Peru is a nascent field. We are lucky enough to have received a grant for this project. So as other projects in Peru dealing with very different film archives, one is restoring feature films by a very important filmmaker in Peru. Others are preserving participatory video in rural communities. But it's true that because of the objects that we're dealing with, it's not as simple to communicate with one another. But because it's a very nascent field, we are exploring tools together. And the anthropology department at the Pontifical Catholic University of Peru made a very valuable effort to have meetings every 2 weeks in which all the projects that are funded by this grant scheme given by the Ministry of Culture meet together. And we've been discussing like the tools that we're using, the criteria, but I guess that dialogue has a limit when it comes to thinking about our own objects. And for us, as a group working with video art, the resources online by the Media Conservation Initiative at MoMA, and the documents are still up in the Langlois Foundation website, have been extremely valuable. But then again, as you were mentioning, the issue of translation has not been minor. And especially when we've been looking at the technicalities of collective access, then we're confronted to a major issue of how do we translate this? How do we adapt this into our own language? And also the criteria that have been used both in the museum and in the Alta Tecnología Andina archive. So yeah.
Okay, it's my time. So you listen well? Yeah. Oh, okay. So the South America contest, and especially in Brazil, where I know it's a difficult situation. No? We don't have a culture of preservation. We have universities, courses, but we don't have forced tasks for preservation and building archives. No, unfortunately, museums here catch fire. No, this is absurd. In fact, it's not only museums, but you know, we have no well-founded theories of media archaeology here, for example, or even a critique of the history of the media in the country. Institutions, as well as a public policy, are far from understanding the problems of the digital. The pandemic situation won't change this scenario because we still have a culture of the object value, very institutionality promoted. I think it's one type of the difficult, especially from Brazil. But I think that the technical construction of the archives, it's a possibility to discuss and exchange with the partners in North America, like Canada or Austria and Germany. Because I think the way for this, because our context, it's a very different. Think things from digital ontology, from ontology point of view. I think because this in my presentation I talked about the machine learning, deep learning, and blockchains, because management the information it's possible for the Brazilian archives. All the level of the structure for constructing archive, it's very difficult for us.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that there's also a lot of things that we can learn from one another. There are some people, they hear the word blockchain and they go, ah, and then there are other people that they hear the other sections, and then, you know, there's a really fantastic ability for us to be able to have some really in-depth conversations and to be able to learn from one another. And I know that all of you have probably participated in some of these archival conversations within your own countries before, and it might be archives of medieval manuscripts or things like this, and then you start to talk about media art and all of the rest of the archivists go, oh no, I can't deal with that. And so it's you know, at some point we do need to enjoy the ghetto that we're in and really do some shop talk with one another as well. There's one question in the live chat, which was about the digital curation, about the decision making of what to include and what not to include. If any of you can speak to that.
Well, I can always start. The idea of curating digital works is a very complex one. When at the art and the Hypermedia Art and Literature Directory, our first step was just to bring together all the works we could find, and not trying to curate them in a way, but just try to make that resource available and understandable. So that was the first part was just collecting, and we were collecting everything that we could find. And after that, we started doing forms of curating, either directly on the directory into the website, or with very specific exhibitions, like the research project I was talking about, or the Uchronia What If exhibit. So we started also doing forms of curating based on specific questions that were asked. Either the Uchronia was, the beginning of the Trump mandate as a president, and the fact that there were fake news, and we had the feeling we were in a Uchronian moment. So we did that exhibit with that notion in mind, and the one on research is more on, well, how do we, how does the search engines transform our daily life and the way we understand knowledge and research itself. So we started doing curating on a second level as a new way of playing with the works we had identified, and we are still continuing to identify. So it's a two-level type of work.
Well, in ePPA, for the moment, we only have video files. Hopefully, in the future, we will also include works of art that involve some level of programming, but we're not there yet. We're still struggling to finalize the project on time, which implies just rereading everything that we've uploaded to collective access in terms of details of the artworks, etc. But because we're, for the moment, only dealing with digital-based moving image files, I think we have decided to present them in the most hopefully accessible way that involve very classical, I think, very classical paths, what we've called paths, like, for example, I don't know, animation, video performance. So we decided to put all this information very clearly in this top-level platform that we created. So for the moment, we haven't really engaged in very deep curatorial decisions, although ideally, in the future, the idea is to invite curators, but also people or researchers that are dealing with the moving image to present their own paths or recorridos, as we've named them.
You need to please turn your microphone on.
Sorry. So I believe in a form of the machine learning and deep learning construction applied to each type of the archive, from the perspective from the artist's studio or database institution. In my dissertation, in my master in arts, I discussed the responsibility of the artists to give the information for help these institutions or formal institutions construct building good archives and quality database. I think that when people talk about the machine learning, the first reaction no, it's not for me. No, like Wim Wenders today talking about the possibility the IZ archives implemented in the Google culture, no, in the Google culture. I don't see problems in this. I think the institutions and the artists need to work with the machines and the mathematical process to construct our own platforms and algorithms for building your archives. I think one different structure about archives in the last years. Day by day, I believe in the archives decentralized for the big institutions or big curators or a digital curation. It's me.
Thank you very much for that answer. I know that this was something that it's a very difficult topic to be able to answer because it changes quite a bit, and there's always the desire to be as open and as experimental as possible, but then there also is just, you have to make decisions at some point of how to use your resources the best that you can, and things like this. I know that we'll be continuing this discussion. Actually, our time is up, and we have one more session that is going to be happening, and then after that we'll be able to move to the Zoom section where we will be in breakout rooms that we can go more in depth and actually talking with one another as well as with the audience, and then we'll have the concluding session after that. But I'm going to close off here and say goodbye for now, and hello again in the very short future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.